All right, everybody, welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol. And today we're joined by Nathan French, a kind of guide, entrepreneur, a guy with a lot of experience in the hunting industry, specifically sheep and kind of multiple species of sheep. And what instigated this conversation was this kind of really out of the ordinary confiscation of a large number of thin-horn sheeps this year. And Nathan did this, in my opinion, a really phenomenal kind of couple days of posts and stories that kind of shed some somewhat controversial and new angles on maybe some of the underlying root causes. So I reached out because he's kind of been on my radar for a while as somebody I wanted to get on just as, you know, a general hunting guy and guide. And then when the sheep thing happened, that was really the kind of, you know, the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, where I was like, yeah, let's just get this guy on. So first of all, Nathan, thank you very much, man. And I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, man, it should be fun. Okay, so before we get into all that stuff, let's kind of rewind the clock a little bit. What is your hunting background? Do you come from a hunting family? And maybe where do you come from? Because we've never spoken before. I didn't even realize there was an accent. So maybe we got to back up further than that. Where's that come from? And what's the hunting background like?
Yeah, so hopefully everyone can understand me. I kind of speak fast sometimes and mumble, but I'm originally from England. I had zero hunting background, didn't know what an animal was barely. I knew what deer was because you'd hit them in England sometimes, but I moved to Canada, BC in 2003. And what got me into that hunting is my parents bought a house right opposite a taxidermy shop. And I walked in there one day and it's an older guy. He's been doing it for 4 years. And it was just amazing. He has this huge museum, probably 16,000 square feet of just everything North America has walking around.
And where is this? What city?
In Vernon, British Columbia.
Okay.
So it's now a museum that you can go and walk through. It's called Wildlife Museum in Vernon there. And it was just as a little, I was only 11 years old. I was just like, whoa, what is this, right? And then he introduced me to hunting. He took me out in September, went deer hunting, whatever, and it just transpired from there, just compounded. I just got addicted, basically. And so fast forward to 17 years old, I graduated high school early, and he used to guide in the Yukon. And he just kept saying, you love hunting, take a summer and see if you can get a wrangling job up in the Yukon or somewhere. So, I typed out my email, my resume, and just asked a bunch of outfits. This is, do you have a job? This is what I want to do. Try, and got the job. And that's 12 years ago, basically now. And I haven't looked back. So, yeah.
Who was that first gig with?
It was with Mervin's Yukon outfit.
Okay.
And the funny story is Ken, this is the guy I'm referencing to in Vernon. He used to guide for Rod Hardy, which is the same area Tim bought. So
okay.
We guided in the same area. Or I wrangled, I should say. I didn't guide there. Just kind of, things happen like that. That's so I wrangled there for one summer or one season, and then got a guiding job / like I started off going with other guides as well. For the sheep, I went to Chris Whittrig's and did 2 seasons there. And to be honest, if I could give anyone advice, if I look back at my career, that is probably the best 2 years I had for myself, because he did things completely reverse to what the typical Yukon outfit would do. And
okay.
he only hired guides. So there was no such thing as a wrangler. There was no cook in camp. It was you, your client, 7 to 8 horses. See you later. So I learned a lot. I learned how to have a good horse wrangle and rodeo, and horse running away and people getting bucked off and packs flying. And those were 2 frustrating years, hard hunting. But if I look back, I would do it again, because I learned so much, and it just teaches you to think for yourself.
Right.
And then, fast forward, I do a horse hunt, and I get to had a wrangler along. I'm like, whoa, this is nice.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's so funny. I met a new buddy this year. We did a sheep hunt, three of us. The one guy I kind of knew, the one guy I didn't know at all. And the one guy ended up having to fly home early. So me and this other guy finished the hunt. And anyways, we really clicked. But just before the hunt, yeah, he'd done the same thing. And he's younger and he's a certified carpenter and a bunch of stuff. He's 25 and he just decided, I'm just done, man. I just love hunting so much. That's all I want to do. So he sent out a bunch of emails, and right before we left on the sheep hunt, he got hired as a wrangler for Stone Mountain Safaris.
Oh yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And his name's Spencer. Anybody who listens to the podcast will know who he is. And we're in reaching all the time, man. And he's losing his shit up there. Like, he's loving it. Like, doesn't want to come back. He had a grizzly walking behind him the other night. And it was funny because that was one of his big fears. He'd never even seen a grizzly. And so I'd worked with him a little bit just on like general bear awareness, and like, it's more psychological than anything. And it was funny texting with him last night, and he's like, dude, he was close enough to throw rocks at. It's like no concern for him now. And I don't think anything you want to learn at, I don't think there's a better way than pure immersion. And with hunting, I think the guiding world is just the best. Like, where else are you going to get? You could take an average guy and add up his field days over 10 years. And it's not going to equal what you would get in one season of guiding.
No. I'd have to count. Like, I don't know exactly, and I don't want to give some bull crap number, but I was doing, in my peak, I was doing 9 months to almost 10 months in a season, right?
That's crazy.
You do your spring bears, and spring bears is pretty cushy. You're in a lot. And then July 1st, you're heading to the north, and you're there till mid-October. Then I'd usually come home, throw in a bighorn hunt in there. You're late October, then I'd straight over to Alberta doing archery bighorns, and you're there till the end of November, and then I'd run off to Mexico, and all of a sudden it's February, March, and you get a couple of months off and start again, right? That's a full season, and I've done a few of those, and then I chose personally to step back, and I didn't do the spring bears because I kind of wanted some time to do other things, right? And then you miss out on so much of your personal hunts too. So last year, when none of us had a job basically in the guiding industry, I did a lot of hunting, and it was a blast. And finally to do it for yourself, right?
That's what I always wondered with the guides, because the seasons overlapped, and twice in my life I've turned the things I loved into jobs. I became a snowboard instructor and I became a personal trainer because I like snowboarding and I like working out. And both times I was like, it makes it hard to stay passionate about your own personal pursuits, because when you're on the hill with like snotty kids for 10 hours a day, like the last thing you want to do on your Saturday is go do more runs. It's like, I'm kind of over it. So I almost caution people with it these days, because I also think temperament, like, I'm not a guide. I would never be a guide. And I think there's an element of, I don't want to say a service mindset, or like I think Spencer will do well because he's one of those guys that almost cares more about other people than he does about themselves. And I don't think all guides are like that, but you're not the one hunting, man. And I think it is significantly different, like the level of motivation and care and attention to detail. And the great guides I've met, they almost stop liking hunting to a certain degree too. Like, you hear about all the old guys, they barely even hunt anymore.
This is hilarious because I am so with you. I used to be a ski instructor. I did that for 6 years, and 100% the same. I lost the passion to ski.
Yeah,
because it just become, it's just a job, and I can look into the guiding, and that is a true passion. And I even say to guys, I feel I'm more of a guide than a hunter.
Right.
Because I don't need to kill something. Like, It's awesome, but I truly do love seeing those people take what they've been, or hopefully saving up for. Some guys, they throw the cash at it and they just buy whatever they want. But I in recent years, I have been able to hunt with those guys who are more genuine, have been saving, and it just means the world to them to be in the mountains, right? They want to spend the 10 days, the 14 days up there. They don't want to just day 2 kill and fly out, get me out. Right? Yeah. So there's definitely two sides to the whole industry, and I found an avenue that really worked for me.
So maybe that's a good segue into my next line of questioning. So just so most people realize, the average role a guide would play is it's probably structured more like a subcontractor, but you're treated like an employee.
Mhm.
The outfit is going to find the clients for the most part. You're going to show up. You're going to be for one outfitter all season. There's multiple seasons for a year, but you'd go up to the Yukon for 6 straight weeks and work for the same guy for the full 6 weeks.
Mhm.
You might do 4 different hunters throughout that time, and you'd be more like the service provider, and the guide would provide, the client and all the rest of it. Now, later in your career, you've transitioned to more like and I was searching for the right word for it and I couldn't. Maybe you have a better word for it, but it's like maybe a freelance guide, or you have the ability to get in contact with somebody, maybe dig a little deeper into what the actual type of adventure they're looking for is. And then because you've been doing it for so long and you got a bunch of contacts and relationships, you can kind of put together a hunt that's going to satisfy kind of what they're looking for on a deeper level, and then work with some outfitters and then most likely taking them to yourselves. But I even recognize sometimes it might be passing them on, ultimately just making sure they're getting what it is they're looking for out of the adventure. That's kind of at a high level. I'm interested in, did that happen because you saw some kind of need that wasn't being addressed? And then how did you facilitate that? Because I'm sure not all outfitters would be open to like this hired gun or rogue kind of option. So I'm interested how that whole thing took place.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I haven't really thought about it that deep sometimes. But basically, and maybe I already explained just by explaining it, but I worked for the man. I could work for the man for years, right? Just one
Yep.
outfitter, and I just wanted more, 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 more. So I just kept searching and looking out for it. But the years went on, and your name gets out there, and people pass your name on, and my clientele list was growing. And then I saw, I guess, a demand that these clients wanted to come back and hunt with me.
Right.
And yeah, you know, I think some outfitters can get butthurt in that. So I had by that time made solid relationships with outfitters that I call the greats in the industry.
Yeah.
And I believe it was vice versa. They did enjoy me being up there and working for them in the past. And, so you have this client you took in 2015, we did a doe sheep, and all of a sudden you got a text message on your phone, hey, I want to do a stone sheep. Can you help me? That's kind of how it started.
Okay.
Also, I believe Dustin Rowe was a huge part in that transition as well, because if you look at his career, he's been doing that for, 12, 13, 14 years, a long time, right?
Right.
And I did 2 years for Dustin, and he was supportive in that transition too. And I went at it a different way, and that was just my own personal opinion or want. But he did it more of a lease, like he would go pre-purchase tags.
Right.
I set up in a way where I just brought an outfitter, a client,
Okay.
and made that business transaction of what each person thought was deserved in that.
Yep.
I just, the risk of what Dustin did, right? Good for him. That's huge.
Yeah.
You throw a couple $100,000 on the plate at the beginning of the season and you haven't sold him yet, right? I wasn't in a position in my financial career or whatnot to be able to do that. But what I believe I did do worked.
Right.
And it has. And it's I've really built a great clientele list, and it's honestly the last 4 years, I bet you I could only count 8 to 10 guys who I keep hunting with. It's just the same guys. They just keep coming, so it's more just, yeah. I don't know if that made sense, but
no, it does. And I've a really good buddy of mine, Tim Winslow, who runs an outfit down in Arizona. It's funny. It happened to him like this twice. So the first time he used to just be an Alaskan guide, and he worked for, it was the guy who was on one of those Discovery shows. His name's Eric. And I'm trying to remember what lake it is. It's on the tip of my tongue. Might start with an L. Anyways, doesn't matter. Worked for this guy for a long time. And then it started happening that people would find out he lived in Arizona. And they're like, oh, we want to hunt Coues deer. So just real organically, he developed this outfitting business in Arizona that he never really set out to do. And Arizona is a little bit different than BC in that if you can find a client and and you've got a tag, you can guide them. There's not this like predefined area, so it's a little bit more Western in that regards. But then with his northern hunting, it's the same thing. Now he just runs like a boutique almost Alaskan guide service, and he'll buy some tags off of Eric or do some other stuff. But it's more like that high touch. Probably only has a dozen guys and maybe goes out with 3 or 4 per year. And it's a little bit, yeah, it's the same thing. And I mean, there's only a couple ways to go. You do this thing long enough. You're either going to buy an area or you're going to transition into something like you've done, because it's not something that you're going to need to add another element to the picture in order to really become financially successful in any meaningful way, being a guide, other than just serving clients and living on your day wage and tips, because it's just not a lucrative position.
And that would be a good point too, is I wanted to make it a career.
Right.
And you have to hustle to try and make guiding a career, because you can't make a living really on just a straight guide wage, right?
Yeah. So I know photography is another big thing for you. How did that come to like weave into the whole picture? I can see how it would organically be something that a client would need, but kind of walk me through what happened in that regard.
That's just that honestly I would say it's a hobby. I actually was a huge, well, not huge, but I really enjoyed videoing hunts. That's where I started, and I was piss poor at it. But I enjoyed, making my own little version, and I always send it off to the clients after the hunt. And
they must love stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And just to look back, like I killed my first ever stone sheep in 2013, and I made that's a YouTube video I did right eventually. But you forget some things about that hunt, and then you go and recap it, right? It's like, oh man, I forgot that day. That sucked.
Yeah.
Right. And it's funny, you always kind of forget the bad days or remember the good days, but sometimes those bad days are good ones to remember too.
A big part of that too, and I don't mean to interrupt, what really got me is I would come home from a long backcountry hunt, and I have a real hard time like assimilating back into, culture and society when I get back. And people would ask me like, how was it? And I'm like, nothing I tell you, like the words aren't going to land, and you're not going to, I am going to fail at being able to accurately explain what that was like. And that's what really, I didn't realize it till afterwards, but I think that was also a big part of what drove me to film stuff. Because even more so than photography, and sometimes I make things really long on purpose because I don't know how else to communicate like the monotony or the drudgery or like the struggle and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think there's no other medium that does. I don't think video is perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it's certainly the best one of what we have at our disposal to really share like what it's like out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, I was trying to think when you're talking about how I got into more, because maybe I lost interest in the video, or maybe I think what it became is like just so time consuming, and what was it giving me, right?
Yeah.
Like for clients, I'm getting at. I always video my own hunts still. I really enjoy that, but there's a lot of time involved in editing, I think.
Tell me about it.
I wasn't trying to be the next Wild TV. So then I just got, into stills, and I've always been a huge wildlife fan. And I just thought, well, I do a ton of archery hunting, and I'm always close to these sheep, and so I just started getting photos of myself, and then it was actually a friend was like, "Oh, you should like start promoting this. Like, this is really good stuff. I'm sure the odd person's going to want a picture of a sheep on their wall, right?"
Yep.
And so I did try and market that a little bit, and yeah, that's still just a hobby for sure. But I do sell prints on and off, and I'm no Darren Epp, I can tell you that. And he's an inspiration right there. Like, I would say he got me into it a bit for sure. And I've gone out with him at different spots. Wild Horse Island, we did a trip down there. There's some goats down south here that there's no hunting, and you can get real close to them. So I've got a bunch of my goat photos from there. Just
Where are you located these days?
Vernon, BC.
Okay. Yeah, I'm someone who, like, I get inspired by people who are better than me.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can hold my own on the video front, and I like to think I take somewhat decent photos, but every now and then I'll look at somebody else's photos. I'm just like, holy shit, man.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how you even saw that. Like, it's just, yeah, it's one of those ones where you either get inspired or you just want to quit, because it's like, I'm so far from that.
Oh yeah. And I'm so far from that too.
Yeah.
That's why it's my little thing I love to do.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to make bank on it or trying to be famous. I can tell you that. It does feel good though, that when you get encouraging words from people, and I've sold almost 100 prints since doing it. So
I mean, man, that's pretty good.
That's not bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, I shouldn't say it's changed a little bit more the longer I've hunted, because I think I've stopped feeling like I have something to prove. But I used to get really depressed after failed hunts, like bad. Like I'd come home, my wife was me like, you got to get your shit together, because like I don't watch this kid for a week by myself for you to come home like an asshole. But then when I started having films to edit when I came home, it was different, because I was like, okay, I didn't kill anything, but I got this thing that like I made, and it didn't exist before, and now it does, and I can share it with people, and I get a little bit of like social media interaction, so I get a chance to talk about it a little bit, and it's really helped change my mindset. And I think that, coupled with once you put down a handful of animals, you realize it's just not going to happen every time, and I don't have anything left to prove to myself or anybody else, so I can like take it on the chin a little bit better than I used to, for sure. But that filming and photography, even just, sitting in Lightroom for a few hours, every morning the week after the hunt and tweaking those photos, even if they are just landscapes and they're not grip and grins, like I really think it helped kind of ease that transition out of an unsuccessful hunt back into like day-to-day life.
And, that's a deep, deep rabbit hole in the sheep world. At some points you just made is something to prove.
Yeah.
And social media. Honestly, those are 2 points that I think have affected what's going on with our sheep in today's industry.
So let's take this option and get right into it. So for because not everybody's going to be a sheep hunter on here, and not everybody's going to kind of understand the nuance of what's going on. I've actually had Bill Jeck send me the numbers for the last decade, so I can tell you exactly how many sheep have been confiscated, and we'll get into the reasons. But here's the bottom line: is there is an alarmingly sharp increase in the trend line for confiscated sheep. And these could be for a variety of reasons. It could be an argument over full curl. It could be an argument over annuli. Recently, there was some taken because of lack of appropriate meat was taken out of the field. And 2016 was really the year that it kicked off. Like you can go pre that, and it's trending, like the amount of tags sold to the amount of confiscated rams. Like it kind of seems to be in line. And then we kind of hit the knee of the curve, and things start to take off. And it's still, to put things in context, we're not talking 50 or 100 rams a year. We're talking single digit, low double digit numbers. But when you look at the number of rams harvested, it's a significant percentage. So the problem is sheep are getting killed that shouldn't get killed. Now the question is why, followed with what can we do about that?
Yeah. And does anyone know the why?
Yeah.
I think there's 101 different opinions out there, and it's a gray line. It's not black and white, and there's too many opinions. It's what I'm trying to get. That's what I was trying to do the other day with those stories.
Yes.
I'm not trying to pin it on it's the biologist, because I had a conversation with Mike Bridger, who I know personally.
Yep.
And he came kind of defensive at first, and I'm like, I'm sorry, man, I worded this incorrectly, and I took it on the chin. And I put out there that I'd said that wrong, but there is an issue, because it continues to happen.
Yeah.
So there has to be a fix. And what is the issue? there's so many, like I have friends who say, oh, if I'm making a trip all the way up to Dees Lake or wherever I'm going, I have to come home with something.
Yeah.
Why? Why do you have to come home with something?
Yeah.
And where has that mindset come from? And I blame social media 100%. And there's so much ego in this industry and sheep culture now. And it kind of, and me, I'll blame myself too. I remember the process of becoming to where I am now. Starting as a young wrangler, I wanted to prove myself. Right. I wanted to feel validated. I wanted to show people that I was good and I could last in the industry. And that got me into trouble. I wouldn't lie. Like people, you rub them the wrong way and then they remember that for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it started to come when I didn't have to prove nothing.
Right.
I've done it long enough that who cares? A guide is not famous. Whoever is guiding you are not famous.
Right.
And, to the point of when a hunter kills a ram, why is the guide taking a picture on his own with the ram?
Right.
That little things like that. And I used to do it. I'm not saying that this isn't me. I used to do it. My mindset is why are you doing it? Right? You're just a tool that helps someone get it. It's not your, I don't know. I could be going off on the wrong tangent here. It's just
no. I think this is all really good stuff to get out. And I think the other element here is there's a bias introduced by social media because people don't put up, even if they do put up pictures of an unsuccessful hunt, the algorithm doesn't grab them like a grip and grin does.
Oh.
And there's this perception of young hunters. Like, dude, it took me 7 hunts to kill my first elk with a bow. 5 years, 7 hunts. And that's not what YouTube tells me. YouTube tells me Born and Raised Outdoors goes out and shoots 9 elk every September with 4 dudes. So it's there's a very skewed story being put that you receive from social media that is not in line with the reality of the situation. And I think that's another big part of it. There's a lot of failure going on there that not a lot of that doesn't get the same amount of airtime as the success.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It comes to why are we out there hunting?
Right.
I think we've lost that. I'm just about to go on a quick hunt with a buddy, and I was just on the phone with him today, and we're not going to be able to get into one spot we wanted to go to, so we're going to go somewhere else, and the chances of killing something are way less.
Gotcha.
But the conversation was, I don't care. I just want to get out there. Yeah. I want to get away from the life of right now and work. I just want to be out there. I don't even care if I have a weapon in my hand.
Right.
And maybe, some hunters are going to listen to this and be like, oh, that's just your excuse because you're a shitty hunter. Well, okay. Okay. No, it's not. But I don't know. I don't think you can ever change what's happening with that sort of ego and I have to kill something. I don't think we can change that. I just hope people realize that we are so privileged to be able to do what we're doing right now in British Columbia. And like I said, when we first got on the phone, I'm worried about this industry.
Right.
In 10 years, do we still have the same privileges we have right now?
Yeah.
And the privileges are not rights, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I won't say I'm as evolved as you are about, being able to just go out to be out there. I definitely still stay focused on the goal, but not that you're not focused on the goal. That's not what I meant. I have a hard time separating, success is still, I have a hard time separating that. But what I've done for myself, and because I did kind of make a side hustle out of the Instagram and the YouTube thing, and I like putting it out, and that's why it's called Mindful Hunter. And I'm trying to put a more mindful perspective on the pursuit or the discipline of hunting, whatever you want to call it. Mm. And I had this epiphany driving home, and it wasn't even until last year's elk hunt. And it was I'm not one of these guys, and I could name off a bunch of names that get access to private land or a bunch of doe tags in Oklahoma or ranches in Texas where I can stack bodies all year. And that's what's going to drive the viewership of the channel. But I realized I live in one of the hardest places to hunt in the world. And for $20 to $60, depending on the species, I can craft these incredibly difficult hunts. And what I realized was after putting out a couple of failed hunts that were incredibly hard and the feedback that I got on the films, I was like, people like watching me beat the shit out of myself. It's almost more entertaining, and I almost get more out of it than putting an animal on the ground. So what I realized is I have no control over the success of the hunt, but I do have control over how hard it is. And so I started going out of my way, and that's what led me to go do the solo goat thing last year in February. I was like, okay, how hard does it get? Like, what can we do here to just make it as challenging? And I didn't take a goat. Probably one of the most memorable hunts of my life, and I'm already planning my February hunt. And it's like, that's one of the things I'm trying to do is it's like, if you want to be prideful about something or egotistical about something, let's make it about the challenge. Because then you can come home and be like, look what I was able to get through. And I think that is like a more like a positive way to still like take some control over the hunt. Cause like it is tough. Like I do feel for these younger guys, especially when you tell everybody you've gone hunting and then people who don't understand that you don't always come home with something. And I think there's gotta be a way where you can still feel like you had a success in some way.
Well, I'll give you a real life story, and I think it portrays to what you just said. Is I did a stone sheep hunt. I killed my bighorn. I was tagged out, so I went with a friend who was looking for stone. We did 2 weeks, and we came home without a ram. Okay. I could, people might know I went on this hunt. Oh, he didn't post a picture. He didn't kill one. He didn't kill one. There's my success story. I was unsuccessful. Okay, well, ask me about the hunt. We did 108 Google miles, like we tracked it. Did 108 Google miles. That's probably not accounting for all that little crap you do, right?
Yep.
And that's a no bullshit number. So, some people like to. My fish was this big.
Yeah.
And we've seen 126 rams. Yeah. Okay. We also passed up 18 legal rams. So were we unsuccessful? Depends what's successful.
Yeah.
We chose to pass up good rams. And that's a story I like to use now, especially with this whole debate we're having with age of rams and stuff, is 18 of those rams would have been killed by 95% of the residents probably.
Right.
If they were with me, because they would have defined their success of coming home with a 7-year-old ram.
Yeah.
That does nothing for me. I don't want to be egotistic in that if someone's first ram is a 7-year-old full kill ram, good for you. It's the ones that really bother me are the guys who've killed 2, 3, 5, 10 sheep. There are guys out there who've killed more than 10 sheep. Yeah. I know them personally. Why are they killing just a ram? Why? Yeah. There is no need.
I can tell you've hung out with Clay lots because that's exactly what he said. He's like, listen, man, your first one, if it's legal, shoot it. Don't care. I will pat you on the back. That's your, I want to use the term right loosely, but as your first sheep, no problem. But he's like, as soon as that's done, go fuck yourself. That's enough. You need to be held to a different standard.
And I'm people listening, like I'm not attacking those people who have killed a 7-year-old for the first round.
Yes. Yep. Totally get it.
I'm attacking the guys I know who have more experience and know better, but they still define. There's guys like I said, they say, "Oh, I have to come home something."
Yeah.
These are guys who've killed multiple sheep. Why is that happening?
Same thing you alluded to earlier. It's the ego, and I don't want to shit on anybody either. I've never killed a sheep, so it's the last thing I don't have the credibility to shit on any sheep hunter. But
I've killed 2. Like I can't say much, right?
Yeah.
But that's a personal choice. I've passed up a lot of legal rams.
Yeah.
That's just I've got my own goal, and my goal is I probably will max out at 3 stone sheep is kind of number.
Yeah.
I'm looking for an archery ram. It's still going to have to be something special. And I'm looking for that no-brainer.
Yeah.
Boone and Crockett old ram.
Yeah.
And to add to the story, one of those rams last year, was mid 160s, 7-year-old. And it's also who you choose to hunt with, because the guy I was with, he's never killed a sheep, and he passed that around.
Wow.
He's on the same, and that's not, again, an ego thing. That is just his personal path he's on.
Yeah.
And he wants to kill probably only one stone sheep, he said.
Yeah.
And he wants to make sure it is the right one.
Such a personal thing, man. And it's so hard to explain, and it's so hard to convey. I would like to see a bigger trend of like what I passed on pictures on Instagram. I'd love that. You know what I mean? Like, let's get some pride or be egotistical about that, because here's the other thing that people don't realize is like the real killers in BC aren't anywhere near Instagram. Like, through doing this and through being on Hunting BC for years before this and just meeting some like legit old dudes, the type of shit some people have killed in British Columbia that pictures have never seen the light of day. And it's just like all the younger guys like running around, thinking what they're doing is really impressive. That's the other thing. A lot of the guys who are doing the truly impressive stuff in British Columbia, people don't even know about.
No. And on a guiding side of things, a lot of people don't know what I've killed in BC because I don't post BC stuff. I guide.
Right.
And that's out of respect for the outfitters usually.
Right.
And there's guys watching it. They know, oh, Nathan's guiding in BC. Let's see what he turns up, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
That's just a personal choice. I'm not saying I haven't posted stuff I killed in BC, but there's stuff on my phone that isn't on Instagram.
Yeah.
But yeah, you are right. I know a couple cold killers who they don't need that 5 seconds of glory. I call it.
Okay, so let's take a bit of a turn with this, because I think we both agree a lot of the whatever percentage of this comes from the incentive of social media, which is probably a significant chunk of it. There's going to be maybe some stuff we can do about that. There maybe there isn't. But then there's another chunk that I think we can have more of an impact on, and that's like decent dudes who just made the wrong call. And I know one of these, they sent me the picture after the hunt. It was his partner that shot it. He was super proud. They looked at it for a really long time in their minds, and this was one of those, like, it wasn't a giant old ram. Do you know what I mean? It was a bit younger, but in their opinion, they're like, I'm pretty sure, like they thought, not pretty sure. They were convinced that was a full curl ram. They took it. It got confiscated. And I do think there is a percentage, and I'd like to hear about this meat thing. I still don't know how they're coming. I don't know if they weigh what's left in the carcass or or if they found something left in the field. I think that's a bit of a murky one that we need to get into. But let's turn two questions into one, because I think the other thing about bad decisions are maybe unclear regulations, because sometimes somebody came to a conclusion and under one interpretation of the written reg, it would have been okay. But under another interpretation, and let's say there's potentially room for multiple interpretations based on kind of foggy regulations, how do we fix the education/regulation issue? Or maybe a better first question is, what's wrong right now with the education or regulation system?
Well, first of all, you got a 1 inch by 1 inch picture of a crappy drawing of a stone sheep with a little dotted line that shows legal, right?
Yep.
People need to realize that to truly know a ram's legal is you have to be 0 degrees straight on with it. You can't have any degree up or down. That changes it. The other thing, and I've got videos I could show you, this is going to be too hard to explain, but it's the way it's sat twisted too.
Right.
So if it's perfectly perpendicular, and you're 0, that's what you want to look for. As soon as that ram turns and it's looking away from you or towards you, but it's still side on, that legal line changes again.
Right.
So a big one is I like to use is like Bighorns, because there's no age, right? So you have to be 100% on co.
Okay. And
I've been 60 yards for 4 hours on a Bighorn. Is it? Because it's this, right?
Right.
I'm not perfect. I don't know. Like it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing it for enough years that I have confidence. But if I'm sitting for 4 years still, and then you got a guy who's brand new, well, I hope he's sitting for 4 hours to decide. Because
Yeah.
it's like guys who say, "Oh, I can age a ram at 800 yards." I'm like, good for you, because I can't. I just can't do it. Get into shooting range and make sure you age that ram, because I can't. I don't care if you got a 9 mil Swara. I've tried. You can't age a ram at 800 yards unless it's like one of those just perfect annuli rams that like the sun's hitting it, and it's just majority of rams you cannot age at that distance.
What is a reasonable distance? Like it would be a range or whatever, but what's the number when you start feeling comfortable? Like, yeah, I'm 400. Yeah.
I always use 400. I've done it. You can stretch it, but 400 is, you want to be confirming. And those are the rams. If you're still trying to confirm at 400, you're like, oh, is it? Walk away. Those are usually those 7-year-olds. Am I trying to make an 8th annuli?
Yeah.
Right. Like I'll use my stone sheep I killed, for example. I was 30 degrees above it, 360 yards, and made it legal in 10 seconds because I counted an 8 was on top of its head with 5 inches of base left before it stopped. He's legal.
Yeah.
Those are no brainers. It's these rams that you're trying to make legal. Those are the rams I think we need to educate. And
it was really an awakening for me. I have a Zeiss 95 mil Harpia. Like, it's the eye of God, man.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't see any rams on our hunt, but even just glassing the lambs and ewes, I was like, holy shit, man. When you're 700-800 away, and it's like that scope does spot. There is no better, arguably based on personal preference, I guess. But I was like, man, I would be hard pressed, dude. Like, you would definitely need to be closer than this. Like, I'm just seeing like glints of lamb tips and stuff, and it was like not. I thought, because you see people's pictures and everything, and you're like, or you take a aging seminar, and it's like, you go this and this, and then you're there, and you're like, holy shit, man, I don't know.
So I don't know if you caught onto that one post I did on the story. That's another thing is, yes, we need that education, and people need to like look at a dead head or whatever, a ram is already killed, and understand the annuli. You're not doing that on the field.
No.
You're 400 yards, 500 yards out with the wind blowing on a side hill and the ram's moving. You don't get that.
I like that one where you shook where the screen was shaking, and then Buddy's next comment is like, well, stop shaking the screen. And it's like, well, you don't get to stop shaking the screen when you're out there. This is the whole point of this exercise, bro.
That's age it, because that's what your eye sees.
Yeah.
And so little tips if someone's
even like the heat waves, that was blowing my mind this year too, man. I was like, holy shit, like they're just wobbly sheep 1,000 yards out.
That's a personal preference. That's why the eye of God, that's I call that the Swara 90, that yours is the 95.
Yeah.
They are incredible, but use that midday, they're no better than a 60, right? Heat wave destroy. Yeah. And actually this year on a doe sheep, I was only 400 or 500 yards away, and I was with another guy, and creeping up on it, and we're right on like ground level, and he's just over there, and we're looking, and you can't even tell it's a ram.
Yeah.
Because of those right on the ground surface, right? Like you're like, okay, what? Like I can't age this thing. I can't make this legal yet.
Yeah.
So you got to just put yourself in a position where you can. Don't just guess.
So what's your own? And I think you've already kind of alluded to this already. But what's your own kind of personal checklist when so you've seen something and it shows a bit of promise? So it's definitely worth a second look. What's the actual process you're going to go through now? Like, what do you want to find?
Obviously, typically you're going to start from a mile or two where you're going to spot it, right? It's on a ridge. This takes experience, and I've been wrong. And Clay explains this too, is look at the body of the ram.
Right. Yes.
That is a good one, because by that 8th year, typically the ram starts, looking more stout in his body. Its back starts to, big pot belly, a bit of a sway back. bigger head, bigger nose, like all these different little things I'm looking for. You usually, and the thing is if you just got one ram standing there, it's hard to, guess. If you've got like 6 or 7 rams, you can sometimes usually, oh, that ram looks different, right?
Yeah.
Body size is bigger. Oh, look at that big pot belly. Look at that sway back. So you see that, okay, you may as well get closer. But you might just want to get closer anyway, right? If you see you can't see horn from that distance, right? So get in close. That's the only thing. Like, I make a decision, if you're gonna go see these rams and you're making a commitment to hike up there, why stop at 800? Go in there.
Yeah.
In a guiding point of view, you have to read your client, right? If it's just a scout mission and you're not going to kill it at this point, and you've got 12 days ahead of you, do you leave your client in eyesight, 400 yards behind you, and you do that last big push to see what we've got going on, right?
And what's the legality in BC? It's on you as a guide, isn't it, here?
What? Say that again?
Whose responsibility is it to call it legal? Because I know some jurisdictions, it's on the hunter in BC.
In BC, it's the hunter, yeah.
Okay.
And that's an interesting one, right? I actually found it out. Well, I knew it, but I had a conversation about this year about, oh yeah, it's 100%, because one of these rams that was taken, right? It was on a guided hunt.
Oh.
And so, whose fault is it? Well, the guy pulling the trigger, but the defense of the hunter, and I get this, he's paid X amount of dollars for this hunt. You're paying for a professional,
Some of these guys too, man, and I don't mean to call anybody out, but they are not the most experienced people in the world.
No.
Like, they don't kind of have the first right to be calling a legal sheep one way or the other, some of these dudes.
No. Like, I'm going to take on my shoulders that is my call when I've got a client with me, because I hold myself to that level.
Like, ethically, that's your responsibility, but legally, they're the ones that, that's tough, man. Because what are you going to do if you're in that situation? Here's this guide who's got X amount of years of experience, and he's telling you to pull the trigger, and you're going to say no. That's tough.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah,
that's I get that. I reason with the hunters on that one.
Yeah,
especially on guided hunts. Like, that's That would be
okay, so we get inside 400. Now what are we doing?
Counting.
Yeah.
Do
you use the crown thing that Clay kind of proposes? Not your cup of tea.
And not to like, Clay is surpassed anyone. Okay, he knows that. Everyone, like, he's been doing this long enough. That's the crown rule. I've never personally used.
Okay,
and I'll give it a reason, and I'm sure I'll have a phone call with Clay if he listens. We'll have our little arguments. But I know him well enough that this isn't going against Clay. I think we need to, with especially some of the sheep hunters out there, is we need to slow people down.
Right.
So in Clay, like, this is for count, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, let's get guys know what's 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
Yeah.
Because there are stone sheep out there that, you kind of, okay, 4, 5, 6, there's a crown. Oh, there's 5 in the crown is legal. Well, take a step back, and that crown line is actually 3, not 4.
Right.
Because it depends on the region you are. And I've got multiple pictures of rams that had incredible growth early.
Right.
And it's usually those bigger rams, right? Big, heavy bases, long rams, like, and they're probably an 8-year-old ram. And I'll use Montana, for example. They're growing 200-inch rams at 5 years old, right? They're putting all their energy into growing so much, they're not going to live long.
Right.
So Clay's a big believer in that, and I'm a believer in that, is if you have a Boone and Crockett stone sheep or doe sheep that's 7 or 8 years old and it's a ready Boone and Crockett, kill that ram.
Right.
And
because he might not make it much longer anyways.
He's put so much effort into growth that those, for some reason, those big rams don't live like an 11, 12-year-old doe sheep would.
That's very interesting.
But that's just me. Like the crown rule, it makes sense to a lot of people. Do it if it makes sense. To me, I do my little thing. I just can't. And I think what's happening is, I think the second annuli is what's the issue.
Okay.
With the COs, the biologists, and hunters. And back to what you said is what, in our regulations, if a ram is groomed, there are cases that rams are being confiscated because there's only 7 visual annuli.
Right.
And they're calling that first one you see 1.
Okay.
And it's wrong. It's 2. That's another deep hole. But if we can stop that anyhow, right in the regulations, 8 visible annuli.
Yeah.
Get rid of that opinion of, oh, well, now it's up to us to decide if it's 8 or not.
Yeah.
Because there's only.
What are your feelings on the Alaska broomed or double broomed? As soon as it's broomed, go ahead and take it for the dolls.
I haven't really thought much on it. It has to be double broomed, right? 8 full coat or double. Yeah. Typically,
like, do you see many 7 and under that are double broomed?
It's gonna have to be a pig of a ram.
And that's and then that goes to your other theory that he's probably a bit of an accelerated one anyways.
Well, I'll back up there, or a real tight, twisty one.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I've seen.
I just always liked that one because it's like, it's really hard to argue. If it's double broomed, it's double broomed.
You want to hear the funniest?
Oh, yeah.
The Northwest Territories. It's free quarter coal, right? So BC has that on some of their California. So free quarter coal. But it says, words in the regulations, if you can imagine the line passes that line, so if the tip passes that line, say it's like broken off back here.
Yeah.
You can imagine that line. It's legal.
So all you got to say when you bring your sheep in is, hey, buddy, I imagine that there's just like 8 more inches of growth here.
I'm like, oh man, it's pretty loose up there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I've never really thought the double broom thing about Alaska. It's an interesting one, but most rams, when they're mature, it's an interesting one actually.
Yeah, and I think it's just one of these things that I also think, like, listen, you are going to find, if you do this long enough, you are going to find a sheep that you are not going to need to question. And I think we're in agreement that, like, that's where the conversation really needs to head. Like, I think it's important that we all have good aging skills so that we understand what we're doing. But at the end of the day, there's going to be sheep that are just no question. Like, that is, you were allowed to take that sheep, and that's where I'd like to see things.
So,
move.
And you're asking my process, and this is just second nature to me, but I tell it to people when I'm having conversations, is I look at the whole horn as well.
Okay.
And I call it the timeline of a sheep. It tells you a story.
Right.
Right. And so typically I've found their best growth is actually from 2 to 3.
Okay.
1 to 2, they'll sometimes kind of do the same to 2 to 3, but in a lot of cases, 2 to 3 sometimes is even better than 1 to 2. But that's that, one after 1 to 3, that's a great, like a lot of growth, right? And I've killed rams, I've seen rams that they start off slow and they continue slow, right? So I just look at the story it's telling me. So if it's 1 to 2 and it's done 8 inches, well, 2 to 3 is probably going to do another 8 inches, right?
Yeah. And
then it starts, 3 to 4 will be 5, and then it starts slowing down. That ram's going to be young, because that's going to be one of those rams where its third annuli is level with its ear, eye, and it's a great growing ram. Leave that. Those are rams we've got to leave, even if it's full co and it's 6-7 years old. That's our breeder. It's a prime breeder, right? If it's it starts off slow and it just continues. And those are those real old rams we find, right? They just bang, 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 just stack up. Even if he's 7, he's probably going to be a junker if he's full coat by then. Right. If he's one of those slow grow ones, he's probably going to be tight, right? He's still a breeder. We need him. Yeah. But and false annuli too it really paints a story. Is that you start getting them, say between 2 and 3, there's a kind of a line, it's false for sure. Go look. 3 to 4, I bet there's another line. 4 to 5, I bet there's another line. And that 4 to 5 range, they're probably going to throw a real strong false annuli. And it's to do with when they get into the real kind of rutty higher end, they start rutting, they start fighting more. That's when they real hit the sexuality, 5 to 6, 4 to 6 in that range. And so you'll see it a lot. Just look at pictures, you'll see a lot of sheep have kind of a big false in there.
And just to provide some context, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, with what causes an annuli is growth stopping for half the year, and then they come back in
November to March typically. Right. So they begin their rut and they put all their energy into rutting. Foliage and the snow's flying. There's not great feed,
right?
So the horn growth stops.
Sorry, go ahead.
And then March hit. Let's call it March. I'm no scientist. It could be February 26th. I don't know, right? But
close enough.
Yeah, call it March, April. Things start greening up, and the hair growth again horn's hair, right? So. Right. The growth starts again, and off it goes, and goes all the way till November again. So that's another thing, is I don't believe in half years, because we're hunting them right after their birthday. They're born in June. Yeah, we're killing them in August mainly, right? September. They're a couple months old, right? In a sense, after their birthday. If you're killing them in December, call it 9.5.
Right.
I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's like my fish is this big. Like 5-year-old kids, like, how old are you? I'm 5 months. 5 and 5 months. They always want to just grow a bit. I don't know. He's 8 years old. He's 9 years old, and you're killing him. And also, if you can, like, outfitters track this, but especially up in the Northwest Territories. But if you look at harder winters or harder drier summers, or all those different weather issues, you can actually go back and look, like, say you kill a 10-year-old ram, you can go, 2015 we had a bad year. You'll probably see that in their horns. Right. They'll tell you.
Like, that would represent as a false annuli.
False, so I was going to get to this. Sheep can get out of a timeline, let's call it, right? Okay. Usually they slow down gradually. It does happen. Like, say you got a solid 5, and also you got another real solid line that's a couple inches, and then you've got a big gap to 7. That's probably a legit line.
Okay.
And Bill Jacks, we've had this conversation, and it's to, an injury, something's happened, injury, bad weather, something, and it's growth stopped. And then if you see that rebound, then it can be called a real annuli. And obviously, if there's issues and it's got one of these close ones and they take it to court, they might even have to X-ray it, right? But it's where you kind of see 5, 6, 7. Like, there's no big gap, or it's just bang, 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 kind of uniformed. One of those is most likely a false. I can send you pictures later of what I'm trying to explain that. But,
yeah. I think I get it.
And then I don't know how you can't teach that, right? That's just, I've seen hundreds of sheep dead. It's just something you have to just learn, over time, and look at pictures. And I'm no genius either. Like, I'm wrong, but I feel age of a sheep, I've always just been so fascinated with, and I really care about it. And so it's a passion of mine. And so I've dove deep into it to try and figure it out.
No, I think it's a topic worthy of discussion. And I think there's an asymmetric risk reward profile. Like there's no punishment for being wrong and not shooting. It comes the other way. You know what I mean? It's being wrong and shooting that carries the punishment with it. So I do think, it's okay to be wrong, but let's just be wrong in the one direction.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so let's segue out of this a little bit because I do think it's a bit of a rabbit hole and it's a bit of one of these things that there is no perfect answer for. And I think the ultimate takeaway is more education, more responsibility, less concern about what we look like on social media, and a more kind of holistic concern. And I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but like I'd originally planned to try and I got one more hunt this year, and I was originally going to do a Region 3 sheep hunt. And then maybe some of the areas I was going to go to were burned down and maybe they weren't. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, did these guys not get the shit kicked out of them enough? Do you know what I mean? Like their whole fucking house just burnt down. I mean, I'm like, listen, I'm not going to call anybody else out. If you want to go hunt, go hunt. It's a legal season. There's tags. I'm not going to call you out. But I thought to myself, these guys don't need one more body in there chasing them around this year. Just give them a break. There'll be other years, other opportunities. There's other animals whose forests are completely fine. Let's go chase them guys around for a little while. And I think a little bit more thinking about like that sometimes like would be beneficial as well.
That's it. It's if we're a hunter, we should be a conservationist.
Right.
And right there, you've explained your duty as a conservationist. It's for the wildlife, not our own game. It's for the wildlife. That's perfect. That's what we should be doing. And I think about the whole Fraser country there. It's you've got the fire and you've got the Moby.
Yeah.
They're positive for Moby.
Yeah.
Like I could see the season being closed down there.
I could too. Yeah. I had Ben from Arcadia on and I was like, I feel bad for that guy, man, because he's just taking shit kicking after shit kicking after shit kicking. And good guy. And he's another guy who knows his shit, man. Like he's been doing this for a long time. And it just, there's a lot of things going on in that area that going to make his life very difficult for the next while.
Yeah. Not cool. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to now selfishly pick your brain. I'm going to share a couple of the issues that we ran into over the summer, and I'd kind of like your feedback and like what I could do about it next time. So one of the errors I think we made is that we kind of too heavily bet on a single area. We didn't really have a plan B. And maybe we could have figured out one if we got in there earlier, whatever. I won't get into that part of it. But we were seeing a lot of ewes and lambs. I probably saw 60 or 70 over my 13 days. And at some point it gets hard to tell, like, I don't know, maybe these are the guys I saw over there 2 days ago. Maybe they're not, kind of in one big basin. But that early August, it was the second and third week of August, part A, when you're seeing a ton of ewes and lambs, is it worth it? Like, are you thinking there's a ram nearby, or are we so far from the rut that that's actually a signal to like move on? And part B, how long do you have to be in one area before you're like, it's time to move on? We've given this a good go. Let's go find some new country.
So where there's ewes, there's going to be rams, right? And I would have to figure out where you were, but the ewes tend to not go as far from the winter range.
Okay.
So the rams will wander off in the summer. They'll go to the deep summer ranges. They're going to be pressured by hunters. They're going to go into a little hidey hole. Depending what country you're in, the ewes are typically going to be on those nicest slopes or whatever.
Yep.
Get into the big rock.
Okay.
Especially in stone sheep, get deep into where there's no grass. And you're like, why would there be a sheep here?
Okay.
Typically in Region 7, those rams are in August or in the big gray rock.
Okay.
And as October comes around, like when I'm just going to go out and do a hunt, they're going to come to where probably you've seen these ewes. In October, if you went back there, I bet you a good $1 there's a ram in those ewes. And it might be a little banana horn.
Yeah.
Where did he come from?
Right.
And typically the bigger rams tend to show up last, it seems like.
Yeah.
I don't know. They know the game.
Yeah.
Especially in bighorns. Like I use Spencer's Bridge as a great example. You can go in November and take pictures of those rams. Sure, you see some normal, nice rams, but we know Spencer's Bridge is famous for those 180 passes. They're there. Do you ever see them in the rut down by the highway?
No.
That they know the game. They're smart. They'll find a pocket of ewes that, you know, still back in there. They'll pull them off into the timber. They'll do that. Like, I know I've been to Spencer's Bridge trying to get some of these, you know, pictures of these pigs that I know are in Spencer's Bridge.
Yeah.
And you know, show themselves. So but yeah, like back to where you were there. I would have seen the terrain or the Google map picture, but I would have headed for the big rock.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Okay. And the follow-up for that, when you're in that situation and you're seeing no action is one thing, but we were seeing some action. Like, okay, this could happen. Like I always figured like, oh, maybe they're just a day or two behind because we're kind of on this isolated range. Okay. And by the time we're there for 3 or 4 days, you realize you're just kind of watching everybody do these weird circuits.
Oh, okay. But so you're kind of in a pocket of mountains with big valleys around you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have crossed it. I would have got on out of there. That's probably just a U range.
Okay.
So that happens. Okay. There's just little lower mountain stuff surrounded by huge valleys.
Yeah.
You, for some reason, seem to hang up on those.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have got out there.
Okay.
And headed for the next set of mountains.
Something bigger, something rockier. Yeah. So in a general hunt, as a general, and again, like, there's no perfect answer for this. Mm-hmm. I recognize that. But how long do you normally spend on a given area before you're like, I feel confident there's nothing here, or at least the chance of there being something here is so low, it's time for us to move on?
There is no set number. I think it's just, you got to feel confident in your gut that you got to move on, right? You can't just sit there for 6 weeks. You might only have 10 days. So you just got to make a game plan and follow your game plan.
Yeah.
Knowing that you could potentially pass this up. And another real world experience is I sat in this basin that I know is good for rams with my client, glassed it for 16 hours and didn't see a single sheep, right? So I made the decision, you know, I spent the whole whole day and the next morning, nothing. Okay, we're going to cross this basin and then we have to wrap around. It's a big annuli basin, so you got to wrap around it and get around the next mountain. So we crossed right through the middle of the basin to the far point and then started coming back this way. I was coming back and maybe had gone 600 yards and I was, 100 yards in front of my client. I just stopped, and every time I stopped, I put my binoculars up. I looked back into the basin we just crossed, and there is a giant ram sat there chewing his cud. And I said, boo! And I get down. And there came the story of a big stork, and he killed this ram at 16 yards. It was one of those rodeos. Oh, it wasn't a rodeo, it was just intense, right?
Yeah.
He crossed it, he went over a pass, and we're like, yeah, let's go. We dropped all our stuff and got up there and snuck up to the pass, and it's like big boulders, and we're just kind of like walking along, and my client's next to me, and I just seen this tip behind this rock. I'm like, it's like right there. So I grabbed him and we just like side shuffled until you can see his body. I'm like, shoot, and bang. So I made the conscious decision to move. And I had, and maybe it was in one of those little pockets or little spots you'd never seen it. And maybe an hour after that, he could have walked out and started feeding. I'd have seen him. You just gotta make up your mind of what your plans are and be good with it. Because you can start down yourself, right? And then you come home from, I didn't kill one. Well, I didn't check here. Well, last year in this spot we did all those miles in and seen all those rams, there was one basin that we did not check, and we chose not to. And me and my buddies talked about it today. We shouldn't have got up there, but we've done so much already, and we were tired. We just made the conscious decision now. Screw it.
Yeah.
Right. I'm a firm believer in checking everything, and that's both, even the guy I was with, that's unlike us. Usually we're just, everything gets checked.
Yeah.
And nothing could have been in there, but who knows?
Now you'll never know.
No, you never know.
That was my big takeaway from this one, was that, and I know better. Like, one of my biggest learnings from elk that started leading me to some success was I used to go back in these really far. I'd pack in, 8-10 miles, and that's where I was for 10 days. And if there's action, there's action. If there wasn't, there wasn't. And then when I switched to more bivvy style, it just literally destroying ground, like covering, walking, bugle, walk. See nothing, back to the truck in 2 days, drive up the road, walk, until you finally get into them. And that's what finally turned the corner for me, is it's like, especially with elk, it's like they're either there or they're not there. And where they might not be there, they might be there in 2 days, or they might not be there at all. But when they're there, they're there.
Yeah.
So you got to find the there, then you slow down and start to hunt. But before that, it's just crushing ground. And I should have known better on this sheep hunt, but we had some like tips and, the typical bullshit that leads you to make bad decisions. And my big takeaway is, never will I need more country. Like, that's the hunter I am. I need to be able to like cover ground, and I need to be able to have other places to go. And that with sheep hunting, that's tough though, man, because either you're fighting the crowds and walking in, or you're taking a jet boat, or getting dropped off on a lake, and you're probably going to be some competition there. And then the routes can be somewhat limited and stuff. Like, I think that's my challenge for next year, is finding country that I can like piece together, like work. And it's just not something I've spent a lot of years in the mountains, but like that particular style of planning is not something I've had a whole lot of experience. So that was my takeaway from this year. Mm-hmm. And even thinking about like one-way plans, like, okay, maybe what I do is like get dropped off at one location and plan to get picked up at another lake, 25 miles northwest or whatever, and plan like a one-way route. That's kind of where my mind is headed for next year now, so that I'm not in the same situation where I'm so dependent on a smaller piece of country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's doable for sure. Or make kind of a circuit, right? So you've got a big majority of the mountain you can hunt, and you just do a loop, right? So you can still come back, because there is a lot of spots in BC that limit you, and you need to come back to the same spot, but
right,
you can still make a circuit of it. It's a learning game, man. It really is. It's enjoyable. I'm still learning, and I think we need to.
Yeah. Okay, let's hit up a couple of IG questions. Do you got any pro tips for caping? I'm sure you've done a lot of it.
Yeah, I actually started in the taxidermy shop before I started guiding, which was a benefit.
I bet.
If you talk to taxidermists, they actually say guides are the worst skinners.
Really?
And I don't know why. Could be because they just, it's not theirs. Maybe they don't have as much care. Maybe they don't like skinning, or maybe they just want to get it done. But they're making holes with turning the lips and stuff. Pro tips to cape. Did you say gutting and caping? What did you say?
They asked about gutting and caping, but I think like there's a lot of videos on gutting, and I think caping is.
Yeah. I never touch the guts ever.
Okay.
So everything I usually do is life size. Sometimes it's a head, but mostly life size. So start on one side, I lay it on the side. Always cut down the back. Well, also I would say talk to your taxidermist, right? If you've got a guy you use, ask how he likes his skin.
Okay.
Because there are most taxidermists nowadays like dorsal down the back, but there are the few that there's another technique where you kind of go down the neck part way and then you do up the belly, and it's confusing. I never do it. But I always go down the back and make sure you cut with the hair, so from the base of the head to the
So they go all the way down the middle of the back. They don't come up the belly and then like unwrap in one piece.
Yeah, most taxidermists now you make 4 incisions, so each leg up the back of the leg, about 6 inches above the elbow, and then they go straight down the back to the base of the tail. And so when they put out the form, they actually start, if that makes sense.
Huh. Okay.
slide the feet through, and then come up to the back and then sew the back.
So opposite of my bear.
Yeah.
Because I would do bear opposit for a rug.
That's right. You do belly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, cut with the hair, so from base of the head to the tail.
Yeah.
Make sure you're cutting on the skin side, not the hair side, so you're not cutting hair. And then with a life size, the real difficult part is it's always tight, right? So you got to just skin as you go down and as it loosens up. But I would tend to skin around the other side of the hindquarter just to give some slack.
Okay.
And cut that tailbone out, bring that down, and then do one side. If you're doing doe sheep, this is a big one, is you gotta limit the amount of blood that you get on that hide, because doe sheep and stone sheep have a hollow hair.
Okay.
So as soon as blood gets into that white hair, it sets in, and it is very hard to get it out unless you do it like right away.
Okay.
And like I'll get back to if my tent's down by a creek, I'll get that hide in that creek as soon as the first thing I do, hide in the creek. Okay. If there's blood on it, right? Because then stone sheep for sure, because stone sheep, like taxons, can bleach a doe sheep hide.
Okay.
And make it, if there's some, because they get that natural mineral stain too on their hide. But with a stone sheep, you can't do that. Their coloration is their coloration. So you better get that out real quick. So where the blood really gets onto the hide is like you've done the first side, and now you're going to take the meat off that side before you flip it over, right? So then when you flip over, you're not getting the meat going.
Yeah.
Lay it on a top, right?
Okay. Don't
take the meat off until that whole hide is out the way.
Okay.
Right. So one side of the hide, get the legs out of the hide, the skin right to the base of the skull, lay down a top, flip it onto the top so the meat's on the top, take the rest of the hide off to the base of the skull, cut the skull off, and now you've got your carcass and do your butchering.
Right.
Now you've got a pristine hide. Hopefully, you can have some blood on it from bullet holes and stuff, but that's a big one. You cut that front shoulder off and boom, hit the artery, and it just blows up.
That's good to know, man. That's helpful. This next one's kind of vague. Bighorn sheep behaviors, like in wind, best time to glass, etc. Maybe a better question, because that we could go on for an entire other podcast just about sheep behavior, is maybe like a couple tips or something of maybe things that are a little bit less than expected, or thing that you learned over time that you felt was particularly valuable about bighorns, maybe specifically.
Sit your back down and don't move.
Okay.
And typically in British Columbia, they're in the timber, thick, heavy timber.
Yep.
And that is one species that you need to just make sure you're not leaving around, because here's another real life experience is and it comes from Ken, that Texan's friend. He was in a basin, and he's one of those legends, right? Like no one knows about him, but he's done everything.
Yeah.
And he was in a basin, could hear bighorns hitting heads, couldn't see them. That's basically you'd spend the whole bighorn season hunting them. Long story short, eventually weeks later, a ram pops out. It's a legal, good, big ram, kills it. 18 rams ran out the timber and over the highland.
And he hadn't seen a single one of them?
No.
Wow.
Bighorns live in the timber.
Okay.
Like bighorn success, about 25 bighorns in the Kootenays get killed a season. They say it's about 2% resident success to kill a bighorn.
Wow.
They're the hardest ram to kill. That was my quest. Finally, last year successfully got my bighorn, and that was a 5-year quest to kill one.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, they're tough, but there are some guys down in the Kootenays who are just unbelievable. They learn they know where those sheep are. I don't live in the Kootenays, so I don't have the summer to go scout them. But,
yeah.
I've learned it over the years, and I know good spots now from the help of others, and just going in yourself and figuring it out, right?
Okay, that's definitely helpful. How does somebody choose a guide? Let's say I've decided I'm good. And the funny thing is, I'm batting like 50-50. I can honestly say I've had like 50% really good experiences and 50% just shit.
But I guess, like, okay, if it's a non-resident, you're going to choose an outfitter, right? You can't choose.
There's a better question. Yes.
Unless, again, that's back to the whole story of me is, yeah, you could choose me, right?
Right.
There's a limited few of people who do their business that way, but you're going to choose an outfitter. You see all those posts on Facebook, I want to do a snow shoot, who should I go with? Everyone's going to give you an opinion, right? So You've got to narrow down your field. I would definitely be calling past clients, and I would also be calling the unsuccessful clients and read how their experience was. If they give positive, everyone's going to give positive feedback usually. If they kill something. Talk to the guys who went through a 14-day slugger and didn't get one. If they talk highly about how the guide worked, tirelessly, the outfitter, helped them as best he could move them to another spot, anything like that, right? Those guys are spending big dollars. You're going to want to make sure that the outfit is going to do all they can, and ask for their return. There's limited. It's so hard to stone shoot. There's BC outfitters only have a certain quota rate, and sheep hunting's so busy now. Everyone wants to kill a sheep. Everyone wants to be a sheep hunter. The good guys are booked out 2, 3, 4 years, right?
Yeah.
So
I also don't think people recognize, especially with stones, there's such a limited geographical region of stones when you compare it to like some of the other species. So any serious sheep hunter who's looking for a slam is going to have to, and if they're not a resident, they're going to have to book an outfitted hunt in BC to finish that slam. So I think that's also, like, I tell some people, even BC residents, I'm like, dude, just go do a guided doll hunt in Alaska. Because if you want to get a sheep experience, and let's say you've got a couple bucks in your pocket, you can go do that for 10 or 12 grand. And like, it's going to cost you 60, 70, 80 to do a stones. And for some guy who's never killed a sheep before, like, does there any fucking difference? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not for the guy who wants to pursue the DIY thing. But I think sometimes the pressure that's exerted on that stones and that outfitting of the stones is something people underestimate sometimes because of the function it plays in your slam.
Mm-hmm. I'm also I'm biting my tongue to say this, but I'm going to say it because I like to ruffle feathers. But I would ask the outfitter how many hunters he's taken that season too.
Okay.
Because there are outfitters out there, unfortunately, that have 10 allocations and are booking 15 hunters that season.
Oh, that's interesting because they know there's no way everyone's tagging out.
I don't know. They're already known in the industry. I don't have to say much about it. The good guys have a good reputation for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And I don't need to list them off, but you'll quickly, that's you got to just listen to your gut. And, if an outfitter says he's 100% on stone sheep, I'd probably ask a question.
All right. We're going to do 2 more quick ones. I want to know your favorite piece of gear and like the piece of gear that you like found most useless or least favorite piece of gear.
Oh, that's funny. Favorite has to be Sitka Kelvin puffy pants.
The 3/4 lengths?
No, just like the pants. Yeah, like the down pants.
Yeah, an hour before we got on those just showed up at the door, but I just got the 3/4 length ones, but they're the puffy pants, the Kelvin light down pants, whatever they are.
Yeah. So like, if you're cold, you throw on all your layers, you throw on your puffy coat or whatever, right? And you're still kind of chill. You throw on insulate your legs.
Yeah.
World of a difference.
All right. I'm stoked I got those now.
And you know what? Worst? The Sitka Jetstream. Unbelievable jacket. Yeah. I was just having a conversation about this jacket. Unbelievable. I have never used it in my package.
Okay.
It's always just hung in my closet. Yeah. And it's just the way I build my system. It just doesn't do it for me. It's kind of the weight of it for the benefits doesn't meet a backpack stone or a sheep hunter,
Yep.
They make better pieces that are lighter, and I can layer instead of having less layers in one. I'm a hot hiker too, so you start hiking.
Same, bro. The best piece of I ever got, and it's funny, so I'm listening to a Meat Eater podcast, and Giannis said this, is like, leave the trailhead cold. And so that's my thing. I don't care if I'm leaving from wherever I'm starting to hike, I better be cold. So always like take one extra layer off or something, because 5 minutes down the trail, I'm going to be sweating my ass off.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. I've actually had the Sitka mountain jacket. I took it on one hunt and loved it, and I've never used it again, because it's like that halfway between like, it doesn't really do anything that a rain jacket can't do, but it doesn't keep the rain out like a rain jacket does. Yeah. And if you're like truck hunting, I did take it to Alberta to hunt muleys with Lander. And for that kind of shit where you can like just pick what gear you want at the morning of the hotel, I think it's great. And for the wind that they have in Alberta, I think it's awesome. But for any of my BC stuff, it's like, I'm just going to take a rain jacket because it's kind of going to do the same thing and it will keep me dry. But that's another thing it's been in my closet for a long time now.
Yep.
Okay, last question. What's something you wish you knew when you started? Or what would you tell, that 17-year-old Nathan who is heading off to Wrangell for the first year, now that you got a dozen years under your belt? What piece of advice would you give him?
Stop trying to be someone.
Hey, I like it.
Get rid of the ego.
Yeah.
You're not famous if you hunt sheep. I don't know. Back to the whole, that's just do it for the right reasons. And, your client should be your number one reason, they're the ones paying. I'm talking in the guiding world.
Yes.
Your job is to bring a service to them, right? And I could give you a list of people who haven't killed a sheep with me, and you phone them up, and I would hope that their response is, "Oh, I would hunt with him in an instant again," right?
Right.
And that was in the last 5-6 years, that's my goal, is to really sell a great adventure, right? An experience.
I think that's a great note to end on, man, because it's like, it's very, aligned with what I'm trying to do too. Like, it should be about the challenge and the adventure and the memories. And, Rogan calls it type 2 fun. That stuff that you fucking hate during the minute. But like, who remembers a roller coaster? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's fun in the moment, but it's not real fun. It's not something that burns itself onto your psyche and actually fundamentally changes who you are as a human being for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I really enjoy killing stuff. And again, like, people, if they describe me, I've heard people call me intense.
Right.
Because when I see a sheep and I know it's going to die or in a chance to do it, it's game on.
Right.
Right. And I've learned there's a real fine line between, you've got to be super patient as a sheep hunter and really know to just be patient. But then you really need to be able to switch it on and be aggressive. And I call it like the killer instinct. And there's a lack of that. There is a bit of lack of that. Like, you really got to learn. You know who's got the killer instinct, and I'm just hunting with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And clients I've taken, like, oh man, we'll have a story time, you and I, another day. But there's so many stories. They just don't have it, right? That's why they're on a guided hunt.
Yeah, man, it's happened to me. This is why I keep hunting solo. I keep cycling through. But meeting this Spencer guy was a game changer for me, and I talked a little bit about that on a couple of podcasts ago. That, like, people think I'm crazy because I do all these solo hunts. I think it's easier because I never have to like compromise, or I don't have to get along with anybody, and I can just do whatever I want whenever I want. But I did find having like a similarly motivated partner on this, and the other guy had to go home early, so I don't want to say that like he also had his positive attributes, but it was just Spencer that I got to hunt with the whole time. But having somebody else who was similarly minded and equally motivated and like driven and stuff and had that, you know what I mean? Like, we were sitting there on the strip day 13 and like didn't want to leave, man. Like I would have been,
I love it.
like I don't want to be, there's nowhere else on the planet. Like, yeah, I miss my daughter and my wife, and it'll be nice to get home and order some pizza and like give everybody a hug. But like, I didn't want to go. It was like the only way I can explain, like, I never feel more myself than when I'm out there. Like, I feel like I was born in the wrong fucking century. Like, I'm not, I do okay at all this because I have to, but like out there, it's just like the heart level drops and like I'm just like sink into it. And it's like, I'm at home, man.
Yeah.
And there's, And if you know that, and if you resonate with that, or if that resonates with you, then it's like, then you understand it. And if you don't, you just never will, because it's like, and I think some people are square. That's the other thing about this social media shit is square peg, round hole. People see the cool part at the end and they think, oh, I'm supposed to go do that. And I try and tell people, like, remember, there's hunters and gatherers. And the shit part of this is that you might be a gatherer, my friend. Like, it's just, I'm not trying to be insulting, but like, some people were built for this and some people weren't. And when you try to force yourself to do something you're not built for, it's not going to be a pleasant endeavor.
100%.
No, I'm ranting. Which is what I tend to do as well.
I love it.
Mate, thank you so much. I'm definitely going to have to, we'll get you back on and get some more stories and dig into some more shit. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, bro.
Oh, it's fun. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.